Okay, you segue to the UCI.
Mm-hmm.
Where's BMX at the moment, and then like segue into maybe your psychological analysis of what on earth's going on with the new, with like
mm,
the new organizers, the athletes,
So I was doing a lot of the announcing pre-COVID for the World Cups and World Championships. It was myself and Rich Eames. Rich Eames still does the announcing, which I loved. It's great going to a race with zero care of how you do in the race because you're just announcing the race. That's a very freeing feeling.
I
Yeah,
love that. Yeah, it was. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm bummed I don't do it anymore either. It's
yeah.
great.
I miss
I
that.
was really thankful.
That said, so my experience with UCI was obviously we were doing world championships and all that stuff, and that was our only at the time. That's like 1994, long time ago. So UCI was like, what's that? But that's what it was. Because BMX in the US, we didn't need the UCI. We had ABA, NBL. Anyways, long story bearable. It became Olympic. World Championships and World Cups World Cups became a thing, more of a thing, but World Championships started to mean more. But I just, in kind of following the mountain, but so where BMX is, we're on our 8, 12, 16. So we're going into like the 5th Olympic cycle for racing and 3rd for freestyle, something like that. And honestly, the racing's great. I'm not a big fan of the big hill, but whatever. That's just a fact now. I don't know. And mountain bike has been in the Olympics since '96, I think, since Atlanta. So I don't know that it moved the needle, so to speak. Hey, man, you're wise beyond your years.
You're welcome. You can use it.
Thank you.
Trademark.
I don't think it moved the needle so much as we thought it might. What happened was the funding shifted.
Interesting.
So the funding shifted. So I'd say globally, a lot of a lot of racers, men and women who wouldn't normally make a living could because the countries found it valuable to support it because, that's the Olympic effort means something different from a governing standpoint. From an industry standpoint, up and down, but BMX is so hyper niche and because the bikes became what they are, like I think unfortunately less people can even relate to it. Which is my segue into this UCI mountain bike thing. My fear is that, and I don't think it will because people enjoy mountain biking and hanging out with friends and nerding out over the latest shock or brakes or electronic whatever, or even hating on it. But so there's a fan base there. But from a racing perspective, my fear for the racers is that it doesn't alienate the average mountain bike person. Because as a racer who was complaining and advocating for other racers, for us to have this or do that, I think some of the things we got didn't necessarily improve the sport.
And these were things you thought that the sport needed, or you tried to advocate
we might,
for.
So for instance, with the tracks, I mean, I think and I like big jumps and big tracks, but I think all of it together, I think there's a lot of people who look at it and go, there's no way my kid's doing that because it's too dangerous.
It's stunting the growth of the sport.
Correct. It's too dangerous. Freestyle is another thing, like because it is about tricks, but it's individual. But but a traditional track you can make spectacular, but they just didn't do that. I didn't want the big hill, but we collectively asked for it. So there's a lot of things that I think we wanted that kind of came to be, and we didn't know the adverse effects to it. So, so with the UCI and the kind of like And by the way, this happened with World Championships too. When I got that jersey, I wouldn't, based on the rules now in BMX, I wouldn't have been allowed to race that World Championships.
What, on the point system or what?
Well, back then, you sign up. You send in your entry fee and you race, and then your country gives you, you get your. Actually, we just had a patch on our jersey then. We didn't even have to wear country jerseys in '94, but it was relatively open, is my point. And I understand the limits of mountain biking, and I understand you can't have 1,000 people on the track and all. But I'm just saying in BMX, it's like, I made both my finals. I won cruiser. I made the 20-inch. I didn't win that, but I wouldn't have. It's just interesting that I wouldn't have technically qualified because it was my first World Championships. I didn't have, and I was 19, so I might have even been. There's like a U23 class now, so there's just kind of those things that have changed. So with mountain biking, I just hope that it doesn't alienate the people who are really fans of this thing, and also you got to recognize some of the fans actually support it because they are racers. So the other thing that I think might, from an unintended consequence, might happen, because I think World Cup racing is great. I think I'm a fan of the World Championships. I always feel like that should be at the end of the season rather than like a couple races before. But anyways, that's an aside. There was a time I remember where, I said in BMX, we didn't need the UCI. Given the trajectory of things, at least right now, it could be that the riders don't, it could be to a point where the US series is such, the Australian series grows to be such, and IXS, granted World Cups are in Europe, but it could be to where, a lot of the talent that possibly could be at a World Cup or UCI race are choosing not to, because the Monster Cups, the Monster Series is so much so, or there's money at the US Open, or there's money here, or the red, like there's other series popping up that can actually compete and are seemingly more open, or maybe actually more open, that might actually take away from the best talent competing in the UCI. So what I'm saying is, I hope that some of these changes don't backfire on the UCI in general, and kind of, because remember, I remember in the US, like Norba back in the day, there were a lot of international riders living here and racing our series, North American Off-Road Mountain, whatever it was called, Norba.
Yeah, I raced the Norba. It was my first year over.
Yeah. And a lot of people would come here, and they would race here. They would camp out in the US and I remember it was a point where, as a BMXer, I would hear mountain bikers, like US guys, say something like, "Oh yeah, I was top American in Vermont." I'm like, "What, top American?" Because there were so many foreign people.
No, it was
doing the series here.
Yeah, it was huge. It was really huge.
And so, with any racing, you want the integrity to be as high as possible, right? And what does that mean? That means as fair as possible, right? And that also means that the best people are at your race, right?
Yeah,
to me,
no. That it's happening in other sports with the divide in golf, with this live in the PGA and stuff. And I think there's a world where someone like Aaron Gwynn, I'm not saying this is happening. It's literally, I'm not spreading a rumor. Like, he might race more in America than go to the World Cups. Now, that's not entirely because of the changes to the World Cup. It's just like, okay, but there's a place that's adding value potentially to sponsors that maybe are more American based, or they're going to get enough value from that new Monster Pro Downhill series, right? So that's one big name. Say that happens, because it's a little harder to go over, or and there's other riders. It's like, okay, I'm not going to be in the top 30, so I'm not going to get on TV, fine. I'm not even in the final now, so then I might as well just go to Hardline, go to Crankworks, go to these races. Now we're diluting the talent to like all these different places. So I'm as fearful as you, as well as maybe it goes full circle and we have two series, and the glue, the annoying glue that might keep it together is the World Championship stripes.
Yeah.
And unless the teams banded together and the riders to say, we're not going to value that anymore,
Hmm.
then you could go race anywhere.
Yeah, but I would imagine I mean, I don't know. And what I don't know is the exact rules, but what qualifies you to race world champs. And it seems like there's drama in each country as to who gets picked sometimes.
There certainly
And
is.
sometimes it's like you qualify to race the world champs, but your governing body won't send you anyway, or won't allow you to race, even if you're willing to pay. That's just ignorant to me. Um, but the thing is, the industry has a different objective than the race promoter, right? And I get that the UCI it seems like they're looking to put together this nice product that's packaged well, that is a product that can be like, that's something it's an asset for them that's can be sold for TV and all this other stuff. But it's also interesting too, in that everyone is their own broadcaster now, whether it's series or individual. I don't know that someone's just going to flip on the channels and like stumble on like a mountain bike race and turn it on and then all of a sudden go buy a Transition or Specialized just because, like, you know what I mean? It's not like there's back in the day, or like in the US there was CBS, NBC, and ABC. That was it, and that's what you saw. So I understand the media impressions are valuable, but at the same time, it's a lot of people have control of a lot of different types of media. So I don't know. So someone like an Aaron Gwynn, or they might just say, well, Crestline is a North American brand. We already got one of the most winningest guys. He operates a bike park. Like, there's all these different plays to make that valuable from an industry standpoint, to where, and all Aaron would, and by the way, there's 2 World Cups in North America. Go to those. You'll probably be top 20, top 10, shut everyone up, and then, solidify this, and then however they choose world champs. But that's one race, one lap, no crap. It's
one lap, no crap. I like that.
It's kind of top. I'll be nice and say top 3 or nothing, but the truth is, second place kind of sucks at the World Championships.
Yeah, you'd rather get third.
Yes. And trust me, I've gotten a lot of podiums, but I made a lot of World Championship finals, but if I let myself, it will be a bad day if I let myself think about all those all those missed opportunities. So
yeah, we had an interesting time. Obviously, you can diagnose me however you wish on the personality. It's tough for me not to share an opinion, be outspoken. Mm-hmm. Maybe it gets me in trouble, but I guess I just am so passionate about like the longevity and what the sport gave me, and to pass it on. And I'm fearful of those. Like, I agree with changes, and I agree we can't just stagnate. And then sometimes I go, okay, but the timing of the implementation, I feel like there's a knock-on effect we're not being honest about, and all these things. Like you say, okay, there's eyeballs, but do we lose the core demographic? And the core demographic's the one that buys a bike. So then the bike industry maybe suffers, and the bike industry is taking the riders to the races. And you're like, I don't have a crystal ball. I just have like a lot of questions and worry, I guess.
Just the honest communication of it to the people who do support it.
Yeah, I think we deserve that. I think that's fair.
If you really are like, hey, it costs too much and we want to sell it for this, and this is, but when you hear things like, oh, well, these teams got the message that this was happening, but not these other teams, what's that about? Like, that's just egregious. And by the way, as a top pro rider back in the day, I remember being on both sides of that. Happened to riding for the right team and getting the phone call, and happened to not be riding for the right team and not getting the phone call, and hearing about it, at breakfast, and then running to the track kind of thing. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm just, my sense of justice is like a little bit,
justice and fairness. I can hear.
Yeah,
like principle and fairness. And I think what's ironic is I've had conversations off the record, quite long ones, where I'm like, Now that you've communicated and understand your thinking and the bit of the red tape that you're allowed to tell me, I'm like, I agree with it. I didn't
Yeah,
agree before we got on the phone. Thank you so much for taking the time. Not going to say who it
exactly.
is, but I'm like, come on the podcast. Come and have a 2-hour conversation, because I guarantee you more people will be like, oh, I don't even agree with it, but I understand it and
Yeah.
cool. I just think like we need more transparency in the world and stuff. Like if you just get ahead, you just get ahead of it. That's how I would tackle it, but why don't they?
Here's a very benign example of that. Okay. When I was announcing, before I was announcing, I was like, this sucks. Why don't they say who these people are riding for? Okay. Which I think is a very fair thing to do. And don't get me wrong, I try to slip it in here and there. That's probably why I'm not announcing anymore. But what there's this
I probably
thing,
said something wrong as well.
But what I learned from the professionals who produce the show, who are from I think they're from the UK, that there's this thing called undue prominence, which means you can't just go blurt out every brand out there, because there's people who paid for this and there's other people who have rights to this show, right? And that little thing was like, okay, fair enough. So I try to slip it in there when I could, but there's those little things that people, right? And I'm in, like I'm in the, well, I'm not in the circle, but I'm kind of in, right? I have access. I didn't know, right? But once I knew, I was like, oh, I understand, right? So that's just a benign example. But you're right. Like if they actually just kind of, and if you didn't have to dig through the UCI website and like look at all, I mean, it's so terrible.
Maybe do a press conference or a couple more podcasts. Like, okay,
Correct.
whatever. I'm selfishly like open to having more chats. Fine, but literally, like everyone's like, oh, we're decreasing the amount of teams, and this is the knock-on effect. And it's like, okay, but you can't have your cake and eat it too, because you want to go have more races, which means we've got to go to more venues. Some of those venues can't house all the teams. Right.
Yeah.
So that's a red tape problem. So then they're like, how do we solve that? Okay, we're going to have to decrease the team and the riders. Now, maybe I don't agree with all the methods. However, I'm not in the room to understand why they did it. So maybe I would agree. So it's like all those, if they came out and just said, this is why, which I know why on a lot of things. That's why I have really not been that outspoken the last year. I'm like, I'm trying to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. No one's trying to purposely make decisions that would negatively affect long term. Like, you said, okay, we wanted this, we got this in BMX and it had this effect. You didn't do it on purpose. You just said, we tried it, it didn't work. So yeah, I guess transparency is a challenge. Like, why do people not do that then? Psychologically.
I think there's, and that's the other piece. So a couple years ago, well, last year in BMX, the World Championships was canceled. Not for pros, but for the challenge classes, the amateur classes. They call it the World Challenge. They canceled it. They started the race day and then they went on track times, which if you know BMX, you race with other people. So going by track times is kind of suspect anyway. And you're just trying to qualify through. Again, some people got the memo, some people didn't, that they would go by track times, or at least some people knew the rule. So that's one problem. The other problem was it was like sunny and beautiful 2 hours after they canceled the race. And then the track's just sitting there, like empty. No one's using it. Again, you made the decision. Okay. But no one understood why and what was involved. So people are like, was it an insurance issue? Was it a safety issue? Was there some kind of TV? Like nobody knew why, but it was just like, we canceled it. That's it. Like they basically just, what's the word? Gaslit people would be and so it's the arrogance of it that I think is not appreciated. And Americans are very like, we like everyone has a shot and everyone should have a chance. Like we're definitely, I think, and we're definitely more outspoken than a lot of other cultures. So that doesn't sit well with us. All that said is, I think there is a bit of condescension / arrogance, or at least it comes off that way. Like we know better, or we have a plan, but it's the not communicating that down. And the truth is, there are people who do, granted they weren't asked to, but they do make concessions, right? They do go into debt. They do decide not to go to school. They do take a year's worth of salary and say, okay, I'm going to go for this thing. And then to kind of pull that plug. And not only just people, but companies, like actual businesses that are operating, right? So it's those type of things. So then when you see the price hike fee and then you see less teams, it's like, whoa, and granted, like, again, everyone's making their own choices. It's a marketplace that's open, so competition. But I don't think it's the job of any promoter, and I'm not saying they are. I repeat, I am not saying they are, to pick winners and losers as much as it is to provide the space so that we can find out who the winners and losers are. But everyone who's participating in the circus needs to have the same information at the same time and more of it.
Yeah. Do you think part of it's like they don't want to deal with like the backlash? They like give a reason, then people like pick apart the reason. They're like, you see, this is why I don't give a reason. Like, I don't want to deal with the drama. It's like the rules set, we're not going back on it. So they just like, it's like less admin to do it. Interesting, you say that. So hike the prices of teams, if we're talking about on the mountain bike side. Little Birdie told me it sounds like a lot more, but there's certain things included. They say certain amount of the pit space say it's for free, and the team's like, it's not for free. We're paying for that certain amount. Just change the wording. It's not free. But if you add it all up, what you get included
there's so payment, with the increased fee, there's more value.
Yeah, there's actually, so then the value that you used to have to add on, so you used to pay less, but then you have to buy like extra pit space and XYZ. The price difference isn't as absorbent as what we have in our heads. But they haven't come out and said that yet. The team's having to like figure it out and communicate it internally. I'm like, oh, okay. So then now I understand a bit more. Cool. Do I agree with it? No, but I know why. I'm like, I don't know. Everyone does things differently. So I guess I'm just going with the flow more.
And then you look at, and then so great. So the UCI has a great product, World Cup downhill racing, and it is great. I'm a fan. I will say, while I'm a fan of Max Commensal from back in the day with Sun and that whole and racing against his athletes, I don't know that I want to see 3 to 5 Sun teams out there when I know there's like other brands. You see, that's the other piece. It's like, well, and granted, fair play. Like they have the money, they got the initiative. They feel it's important. They've qualified, all that other stuff. But it's that kind of thing too. It's like, well, it's an unfortunate thing. But I guess maybe you'll see some of those other brands and other teams and other riders in other places. But you got to recognize some of those people have a following. Some of those people have value. Some of those people will be bringing along. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I hopefully it grows the pie. I don't think anyone's like not wanting that pie to grow for riders, for the sport, all that stuff. I just hope that it doesn't. Yeah, my fear is just kind of the unintended consequences, which no one can think about really. They're unintended, and just that some of these things don't backfire. Like that World Cup racing doesn't alienate. Even the average rider who would and should race it, but it's like, I'm going to do Red Bull and free ride and the, blah, blah, blah series. That's the thing. It could actually be poaching itself from future talent, whether they qualify or not.